Chapter 3. Communication Basics. The characteristics of the communication concept mentioned above make us think of communication as a complex process. We will begin by describing communication as an abstract concept that will serve as a basis for the analysis of various phenomena called communication, and understanding their fundamental importance in the social arena. Next, we will analyze the epistemic structure of the concept of communication, from which we will build a general concept. 1. Relation principle. This is the main feature of the idea of communication. In any sense, communication is essentially, at its most basic level, a relation, that is, a kind of encounter between two differentiated elements or units. In fact, etymologically, communication, communicatio, refers to the principle of functional unit, the process of encounter. This principle of relation embraces from physical transformation, crash, friction, and logical transformation, addition, subtraction, up to psychosocial transformation, comprehensive action, history. 2. Difference/similarity principle. Communication requires the observer's physiological ability to perceive or sense a difference. Only that can be distinguishable, can be related. Communication is, in a sense, and at the same time, traffic and production of differences. Thus, communication relates to knowledge, cognition, attention, focus, shape/background contrast. It is based on this difference that make up A. The subjects. Who communicates? We differentiate the communicative action, its nature and duration, etc. B. The objects. What is communicated? We distinguish meanings, signals, senses, variations in actions, and products of such action from what is amidst what we find. C. Relations of communication. How something is communicated. We distinguish the processes that produce and lead to the perception of the differences that make communication possible. The combination of the relation and difference principles result in the following principle. 3. Structure, form. A structure is a set of related parts, and those parts become significant due not to their nature, but their relations with other elements. Thus, a relation in the area of structure results in form. A structure is also identified as a form, a set of related parts, perceived as a differentiated unit. Etymologically, the word information means give shape, that is, highlight, distinguish something from the background. We perceive our environment not as a set of unrelated items or as a whole and undifferentiated unit, but as a set of interrelated structures and forms. This idea is central both for the concept of knowledge and the concept of communication. Communication process essential components. The key components involved in the process of communication include the issuer or speaker, who creates the message with a purpose, develops the idea to be conveyed, plans and projects such idea based on the purpose, and encodes the information using symbols whose meanings match the symbols used by the receiver. The receiver or listener, who receives the information or message, decodes, interprets, and extracts its meaning. The receiver is also called the addressee. The message, a set of signs that communicate something, the contents of the communication. The channel, the means by which the message is transmitted. The issuer may choose to send a message by telephone, email, or regular mail, text message, memorandum, verbally or in writing, etc. The various and rich ways to transmit a message depend on the internal and external facilities available to the issuer to use as many simultaneous ways as possible: words, gestures, postures, etc. Face-to-face communication is the most comprehensive channel because it allows to convey the greatest amount of information in the same act, while written means are less personal and include a decreased amount of nuances. The issuer will select the channel construed as most appropriate based on the kind of message that will be conveyed. A routine message will most likely be straightforward and delivered through a less comprehensive channel. However, a complex message, this would depend on the subjectivity of the receiver, that risks being misinterpreted should be conveyed through a more comprehensive channel. Noise, a set of unplanned factors that may disrupt or interfere with the correct interpretation of the message. Feedback. Feedback is the reverse process. It conveys the reaction of the receiver to the message delivered by the issuer and accounts for the way that the receiver interpreted the information received. That is, if the message triggered the impact expected by the issuer. Psychological aspects of human communication. Considering, as discussed previously, all the variables involved in the communication process and the psychological complexity and wealth involved in the transmission, reception, and comprehension of meanings, we can say that communication flows within a social system that uses people, not mechanisms, as instruments. Communicational units include the behavior of the participants, linguistic, paralinguistic, visual, kinetic, etc. The information flowing in all communicative acts refers both to the content and the process. Some aspects of the communication process do not pertain to the areas of awareness. Reality is perceived by contrast. No sensory continuum exists. Therefore, the issuer and the receiver use both signals that are present and signals that are not. Difficulties in communication. Psychological difficulties or barriers essential to the communication process are found in people, relations among people, or both. Barriers found in people include A. Selectivity. Any perceptive process is inevitably selective. Thus, the receiver gets the message only through his subjectivity, and as a consequence, the message and meaning are pierced by the way the receiver processes the information received. Consequently, a message can never be fully received. Something is always left out. B. Psychological characteristics. The specific psychological characteristics of each individual, such as excessive shyness or withdrawal, and extreme emotional conditions like rage, hatred, joy, fear, shame, or depression, will no doubt impact the interpretation of the person receiving a message and influence the person creating the message. C. Cognitive dissonance or internal conflict. The anxiety that a person experiences when receiving information inconsistent with their values or other important information. The psyche tries to diminish the information that causes such annoyance by distorting the meaning of the message received. D. Premature assessment or tendency to judge means evaluating the contents of the message to approve or disapprove it instead of hearing the message in full and to try and understand the speaker. E. Inconsistency between verbal and nonverbal behavior. This inconsistency occurs when our gestures, facial expression, posture, distance from the other person can convey something different from our verbal message. F. Unconfirmed assumptions. It is the result of creating a message based on assumptions that are incorrect from the receiver's reference framework. G. Mistaken inferences. Inferences made by the receiver based on the behavior observed about attitudes or intents that do not correspond with the actual attitudes or intents of the other person. In the communication process, other barriers can be identified that stem not from the people but from the relations between the communication partners. Such barriers include distrust. When two individuals that communicate do not trust each other, the issuer may conceal his purposes in the message, and the receiver may fail to understand, distort, or reject the message. Threats or fears. Threats or fears can be real or imaginary. People that fear or feel threatened may display a defensive attitude rather than listening to and reflecting upon the message, distorting its meaning. Also, for a better understanding of the complexity of this issue, we can sort communication barriers in 3 categories, including environmental. Environmental barriers are impersonal, surround us, and have a negative impact in communication. For instance, physical discomfort, heat in a room, an uncomfortable chair, etc. Visual distractions, disruptions, noise, buzz, telephone, someone coughing, construction site noise. Verbal. The way people speak may hinder communication. For instance, people that speak too fast or provide unclear explanations. When someone speaks another language, the barrier is obvious. Nevertheless, our own shared language may be incomprehensible for us, maybe due to a difference in age, social status, education level, or professional interests. For instance, a physician cannot discuss medical topics with an engineer, only with a colleague or person engaged in the field of health. Hearing problems are another type of verbal barrier when attention is lacking. Interpersonal. Conflicts arising between two individuals that have a negative impact on both. Incorrect assumptions and different perceptions are the most common interpersonal barriers. Assumptions. An assumption is something that is taken for granted, whether correct or incorrect. An assumption will always be a communication barrier. Here we have a new question. What is truth? The idea of truth has been considered and discussed by various disciplines and ideological movements. Hence, truth is linked to the description that analyzes it. This means that there is not only one unambiguous definition of truth, nor can we talk about an isolated, full, and plain truth. Truth is not accurate, as in exact sciences. Truth is subjective, unique, and therefore is not measurable or calculable. It is built. Liberal arts get to the concept of truth following a path different from the exact sciences and the positivist conception of the universe. Merely as an example, perception is what you see and hear, the way each of us received both internal and external stimuli. It is our point of view. This is to say that two individuals may assign different meanings to the same topic, and this has an impact in communication as well as the relation with others and ourselves. For when we consider a point of view as a fact, we close to other perspectives.